This is the North Kitsap Heritage Park represented in a 3D mode. It's using OpenStreetMaps for what you see as the green outline with faint red trails. I can see, might be a little hard for you to see at this point. And then it's also got the contours have been sourced from LiDAR data, and the LiDAR data also drives this 3D view using QGIS 2.3JS, plugin for QGIS GIS software. And I'm going to try and make this one shorter. I made one that was a little long. This one is just one to get a quick look at this. So if I pivot this map using my mouse and spinning yes, I can pivot the mouse around. So this is as though I'm up in the air and looking at the park from the north facing south. I can hold down Control on a Mac and move the whole thing around. Over here on the left where my cursor is Norman Road. There's an entrance that comes in there and then cuts through this notch in this ridge, and then you can see down here where it's gray is the wetland just outside of the park to the north, and over to the right corner here where my cursor is Grover's Creek. So I am going to zoom in using my scroll wheel, and I think I clicked and that caused it to pick a layer. So this down here is the Miller Bay parking lot. Because this is representing such a big area and this is an image file subplanted over the top of this, it's going to be a little kind of pixelated or faint. But if you zoom in, you can see the trail starts here, and you can either go around off to the left around the pond and then up, or you can go up this other way. And then what you come up upon first, if you take a right, is the bridge, and you go up a ways, and then you start ascending this hill, which has got a pretty good climb to it. It's pretty steep most of the way, has you breathing good. And then as I pivot the map towards me and pull towards me a little bit, you can see it comes to a spot where you can take a left and go off this direction, and you could make a short climb or descent back down to the parking lot, or you can take a longer path where you come along here and you drop down into this ridge for a little bit, and then after you've come down this ridge, you go off to the south, and you can either go off to the south further into this portion of the park, or you can work your way through this valley of, going either down to the right here on this fork, off to the left on this fork, depending on how long a hike you want to do. And I'll pull this more towards me again. So this area where the two different greens join is the Power Line Trail, and to the south is the White Horse Golf Course. So I tend to take this path along this valley, and you can either take this Arbutus Trail that goes up. It's fairly narrow, and it just does a sort of a U shape and then joins this trail over here, or you can continue on, and you're given a couple of choices here as well, where you can veer off to the right at this fork and head off to White Horse, or you can stay on this path, and that's what I usually do to get a good long hike in. And once you've done that, you can either take an even longer hike that goes down the hill and works its way towards the beaver pond down here, or what I like to do is this left turn, and it takes me down this ridge towards the north, and when I've done that, I can then come along this ridge, and there's a lot of trees in here, It's a nice spot to be. And then you work your way to this first fork, which doesn't really take you, too much of a distance away from this other one, where you can also continue your ascent down to the parking lot again. So I'm going to go ahead and just pivot one little spot here and then wrap this up, try to make this a shorter video. So if you chose to go further on, this takes you to this split in this ridge, and you can go up this climb, and there's a loop path that takes you along this ridge. I think it's called the Beaver Pond Ridge, Beaver Ridge, and it kind of does a square or rectangle shape, and then it rejoins itself. And then if you take this down, it takes you back down to this trail that goes back to the Norman Road parking area. There's a spot for like 2 or 3 cars that's supposed to change sometime later. So that's all I'm going to show on this. I'll spin it around a few more times maybe, just to get a perspective on what the terrain in this place is like. There's also maps on the county park site for North Kitsap Heritage Park that you can download, or occasionally there are still maps at the park kiosk when you are at the Miller Bay parking lot. I'll scoot this over and pivot this around. And then one other area that's worth noting is if you do take this path that goes south, it takes you towards Miller Bay Estates, and when you're on this last leg before you get to Miller Bay Estates, you're walking along this edge, and you can see with the topo that it's fairly steep there. It drops off to your right as you're heading south, and it just follows that ridge line, and then it goes to that neighborhood.